Welcome to Raging Bullets, a comics fan podcast, Season 2, Episode 14, House of Brainiac, Part 1.
From the sleepy suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, there are assembled the world's two greatest podcast hosts, created from the cosmic legends of the universe. Sean Whalen.
Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast. I'm a big fan of variant covers. My love for Batman is that stuff. Let's talk some comics.
And Jim Segulin.
How's it going, eh? You know me and Superman. I'm really loving what we're doing. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast.
Their mission, to discuss DC comics in books, movies, and television several times a month in 1 to 3 hour episodes. And to serve all mankind.
Outstanding!
Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensational sensei of the Whatnot, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to jump into the books that were released in April relating to House of Brainiac. There was 3 months of this House of Brainiac event, and we're going to do 3 different episodes surrounding them. So we are going to be doing the first Action Comics, the first Superman, the House of Brainiac special. We're going to also deal with the first issue of Green Lantern and the first Power Girl issue that are a part of this event. In our show notes, all of those issue numbers will be listed as well. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service at InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Jeff Loeb is returning to the Long Halloween universe with Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. Issue 0 and Issue 1 of the 10-issue series. Each are 40% off, with 0 being $239 and Issue 1 being $299. And I personally am really looking forward to this one.
I am too. It's going to be very, very interesting to read this story, and the different art's going to be a change for me. But I'm excited for it. That's not a detraction. I'm glad that they're going back to this universe because I really like the universe, and I'm glad Jeff Loeb is back. And they're going to be I love the artist because it's Eduardo Rizzo, I believe, is doing the artwork on that one.
Well, I saw each one's doing they're having a different art team for each book, and each one's kind of going to be an homage to Tim Saley.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's going to be great. I did not know that. I'm glad you're pointing that out. That has me even more excited. I like the homage piece and the fact that we're using different artists to do that. That's a cool idea. Over at InStockTrades.com, we have our deals of the week. That includes the Captain America by Mark Grunwald Omnibus hardcover. 2 different cover versions to choose from. $150 regularly, 46% off, only $81. We also have Superman by Kurt Busiek hardcover book 1, $49.99 regularly, 50% off, only $24.99. And we have the Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips Fatale Compendium trade paperback, $59.99 regularly, 50% off, only $29.99. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So for everyone in the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some Superman.
For our first discussion, we're talking Action Comics 1064, Superman House of Brainiac Part 1. The writer is Joshua Williamson, artist Rafa Sandoval, artist Alejandro Sanchez, letterer Dave Sharp, cover artist Rafa Sandoval and Alejandro Sanchez, variant cover artists Jorge Jimenez, Paula Rivera, Michael Walsh. 125 variant cover, Ariel Colin. 8 Real Fools variant cover, Maria Wolf and Mike Spicer. Assistant editor Jillian Grant. Editor Paul Kaminsky. And Superman, of course, was created by Cleveland's own Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Superboy created by Jerry Siegel. Supergirl based on characters created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. This is our first summer event that we're really talking about. And we're not going to go through every one of them because there's a number of summer events that actually lead lead into some of the big events we're going to be covering from DC and Marvel. But we haven't talked about Superman in a while, and I figured this was a great character, at least Superman in a while in present day. So I thought this was a great event for us to kind of take a look at what is going on with Superman right now. And this actually answers this story arc starts to answer a lot of questions that we've seen since a lot of our DC events over the past year or so. And what's going on there. Some mysteries have been resolved here. A lot of things converging in this particular House of Brainiac story arc. We're going to be covering the first month of House of Brainiac in this with Action Comics. Jim, as an initial kickoff to an event, what'd you think about this with Superman? We're excited to jump back into Superman, and what did you think about this event so far?
I'm very happy. I want to get to talk about my guy again, but also this is a wonderful story. It's neat how, because you mentioned they've been laying the groundwork for this, with the walls part, and we know this is going to lead into the next big summer event, so it's all interconnecting, and it's one of those things that we both love about, a universe that feels like a universe, where you've got this big event feeding into this big event, feeding into this big event. Oh, and remember that one little panel you saw over there? Guess what? That's this, and that's the kind of stuff that really, made me very happy. And again, it's this right here was how this, again, brilliant crafting on the story. They had this nice, build to a crescendo, with some awesome fight sequences, some great moments of, Soup being Soup, but also the rest of the family that they've spent some time with. All the characters that they use in this, they've all had some page time over the past, year, where they've actually gotten us so we know who these people are. We know what makes them tick and why they're going to do what they're going to do. So this was a very, again, a brilliant way to let people know if you're jumping on right here, here are these people, but also for those of us who've been reading forever, we get to see some story, some questions get answered, and some build up, to some even more big stuff coming down the pipeline.
Also, advancement of a major villain, Brainiac. Brainiac is not just brought in and we're doing the same thing that we've done with Brainiac before. There's something different here. Brainiac is kind of not happy with the status quo. There's something different. Something is missing. Brainiac feels like accomplished everything that he was out for, but there's something needed. And I like that idea of what happens when you have, or you perceive that you have everything. What happens when that's maybe not necessarily the case? And I like that part of this storyline. I think it's something that was really unique and very, very different about this piece. And Brainiac is kind of a key on this. The opening with Lois is really cool because I feel like this at times. I'm not saying quite to the same level as Lois Lane. You and I both have that same problem where it just kind of feels like on go. And I think a lot of people listening will relate to this, where it's, what is a day off? I can't tell you the last time that I actually took a day off. I love my job, so that's not a complaint. Lois loves her job. That's not a complaint. But seeing her kind of embrace this idea of what a day off is, where she's really trying to disconnect. And that it's something that I'm really, really enjoying with this. Right from the Pete Ross mixtape opening. This was a cool opening sequence. The calm before the storm is a great way to do it because we're starting to see the world of Metropolis through Lois's eyes. Lois is interacting with these people that you were mentioning earlier in kind of a day-to-day basis. These are friends, these are family, these are, everything in between. They have a life that is continuing while Lois is on her day off. She's encountering them. Even when they're trying to engage her from a business-like standpoint, she's like, yep, absolutely, but not today. And I really like this because it added this sense of when is the other shoe going to drop, that type of thing. But it was done in such a way where it felt genuine, it felt real, it felt like she was really going to do this. This book is incredibly well written. I've really liked this. It's weird to say relaunch, but we've had this new launch of Superman. We've had this new launch of Action Comics, in tandem. And I think these are books that have really enjoyed like a creative energy that have made these books exciting. I was ready for this. I was ready for a Superman event. I'd been, heavily reading Batman. I'm a Batman guy. I say that, and it's so many heroes that, Superman right now, the energy here in Cleveland with the fact that Superman's been filming here, I have always loved Superman, going back to, in particular, the Christopher Reeve movies. When that first Christopher Reeve movie hit the theaters, I saw that in the theater. I was a Super Friends fan beforehand. I always loved Superman. This is different, though, now. My love for Superman and his monthly adventures is just in a very, very different place. This is fun. Really, really a good ride. Great artwork, by the way, too. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, because you've got a cool energy about Lois, where Lois is enjoying life, but the shots of people that aren't Superman family members, like Livewire, John Corbin Metallo, Parasite, these are and even Lex. These are characters who, they fall into a very different category, each one in kind of a unique flavor. We aren't just seeing our heroes, we're seeing the villains as well, and kind of an overall global view before we get to Centennial Park. And I think it was a very cool opening to this.
Yeah. Well, they took 7 pages of just this fun, upbeat moment, and I'm kind of dancing along with Lois, even though I can't hear the music that's playing in her head. I've got some fun stuff, going through me, and I love just how she's just bobbing and weaving, and the epic high five, the Power Girl or the Supergirl, just the fun, just that positive energy, and just that it was like, yeah, I'm just do, and then you get to in the Superman moments. Oh my God. Those were awesome. Again, artwork, in this opening sequence, as I said, it had me hearing music that didn't exist just because it was so much action. It was just so much pop on the pages. The Superman stuff, just seeing him fly, and then actually he shoots the curl, of the wave, swimming, flying with the dolphins and just soaring over the soccer game and giving the kid a high five. Those are just some really fun, cool Superman moments. And then you get to Clark.
Did you say flying with the dolphins?
I'm not swimming with the dolphins. Well, he's not really swimming, though. He's
flying with the birds, though, which is really cool.
Well, he's flying with the birds, but, he's flying over the dolphins.
Okay.
So as they're doing their swimming thing, that diving thing, which does look really cool in real life if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
But he's flying over. So he's flying with the dolphins, okay? Just like he's flying through the pike on he's not surfing.
Right.
But, it's just a fun moment, And again, even that high five with the kids, Superman high five, these are the kind of reasons I would love to live in Metropolis. These are kind of the reasons that I was like, because we always say I would never live or visit Gotham City, but these kind of moments are when I would want to live in Metropolis. Now, later in the book, we'll see why Jim will live in Cleveland if he was ever in the DC universe, and he wouldn't live in Metropolis. But still, these moments make you go, you'll want to, actually go to Metropolis. Maybe you'll see Superman do a flyby. Maybe you can get a hey, Soup, kind of, wave and a nod from Big Blue. But all of that was just some fun stuff. And then you get to the moment where Clark shows up, and again, I do like when they do make him a little bit more dorky, just to kind of hide the fact that he is Superman. And, hey, honey, am I late? And you just look at it, you're just like, oh God, that is just an awesome disguise for him to make people think he's not Superman. I loved it. And then you get that moment, that look in his face. Get to safety now. Bam, it's hitting the fan. Outstanding, beautiful way to do this, man.
I wanted to know what he was going to say.
Oh, yeah, me too.
But the opening of the sky sequence, when it flashes to a nice double-page spread of the Brainiac robots and, Lobo's people kind of coming down and, descending on the Earth, This was really a cool visual art piece. That's a great way, before you get to the opening credits, to kind of kick off a storyline. It's beautiful. That is a beautiful piece. You know, we talk a lot about poster-worthy pieces. This has the elements of... There's so many beautiful pieces of artwork that would be on a splash page. And that is one. It's meant to be that kind of dynamic moment. It feels like motion. You can actually feel them descending towards Earth. And that's something that is really well done. Because the nice part is, with having so many of them, you have them at various stages of the descent.
Yes.
So we get a sense of three-dimensional play there when it really isn't three-dimensional. And that was really nicely done.
And they darken up the color palette.
Yep.
It's not like brooding Batman dark, but they do give a nice shade over it, including even the following pages when we're still seeing Soup. Soup still pops, but there's more of a shadow on him than when he was flying in or when he was Clark, and at the park and all that. So again, it's that the coloring, because it's not just, the art, pencils, inks, coloring, full creative team are working to tell the story along with the writer in this situation. And it's one of those things, I love that, because again, it's the power of the page flip. You got everything, hey, everything's awesome. You flip the page and a little bit darker. That's when the music kicks in. That's when the dun, 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 as this armada swarming down. And Lobo's people, are they Zarians or Caesarians? I never know.
I believe Caesarians, and somebody's going to be screaming at their at their music player as they're listening to this, going, "What are you talking about?" But I always thought they were Caesarians. But
Caesarian, yeah. So,
So,
I just call them Lobo's people, but since they frequently name them, and It's not just Lobo's not the last of his people anymore. So I figured I wanted to know how to say it. But
in his mind, he thought he was still. Now, Hank, one piece I want to reference. You keep mentioning the darkness of the palette. One of the things I love about it is the darkness makes sense with how much is in the sky.
Yes.
So the light sourcing is actually being impeded by the sheer numbers in the sky. I like that, where it's not black or anything like that, but it's certainly going to put a shade over things. And I thought that part was really, really well done. I love that kind of... It makes sense, for that to be something that's affecting Metropolis and even Superman and his team as they're fighting in the sky.
Oh, big time. And again, to be able to capture the chaos, the beauty and majesty that is chaos and violence. They did a brilliant job with that, because you got Soup doing his thing. All the Soup family. And again, I love when Soup calls out the commands. He's throwing out, Connor, Kanan, Lana, keep to the skyline. I'm needed on the ground. Once, he sees that it's, Brainiac, he goes to Supergirl. She's got more experience, dealing with him than he does. So again, I love just that team dynamic where everyone's not, Superman's lackey or Superman's, subordinate. This is a family unit. They are fighting together. They're calling out what's going on. It's, again, open communications, the kind of stuff I love seeing in a team dynamic. And again, showing why Superman is not a reluctant leader.
It's, even though you said that he was. And by the way, I want to correct myself a little bit, because I'm a little off on this one. But it's either Caesarnians, because the N's in there too, or Zarnians. And I think it's Caesarnians. But, certainly anybody listening to this, if you know the actual proper pronunciation of this, feel free to correct me in particular on this one, because it's something I know over the years. I keep dropping out the N, and I've done that ever since I'm going back to when I was much younger and Lobo was in his peak popularity. I always drop the end off. You know how you kind of do that when you first pronounce something and then you just never let it go, especially when you don't hear it. That's one of the things growing up being a comic book reader. There's a lot of things I still mispronounce because I pronounced it that way since I was a wee lad. So it's hard to let some of those things go. But that's I believe it's Caesarnians.
Yeah.
Cool. And, yeah, I believe. And just clarifying that piece. So.
One of the things, again, I did love is just how Lois and Perry immediately while the Supes are handling the catastrophe, they're on crowd control. They're like, okay, people, you know the drill. We've got the bomb shelters. We got the evacuation tunnels. Let's get moving. Let's keep on going. And again, it's that really cool. Again, it's one of the reasons why I wouldn't want to visit Metropolis, because stuff like this happens. As much as I'd love to have a possible flyby, high five from Superman, stuff like this constantly happens to Metropolis. So it makes it less likely of a fantastic vacation destination for me, and more of a, wow, that's interesting news while I watch that from the safety of my home in Cleveland. Yeah. But I do love, again, the characters. They're not just throwaways. Now, these are major parts of the team, major parts of the family, and they each have a job. And I do enjoy the fact that the secret identity is once again a secret identity. Because the moments of Superman talking to Ms. Lane, and they, it's that whole, you got to protect the secret identity, stuff going on. And again, I like seeing those little moments.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those moments are fantastic. Watching Brainiac, kind of analyze this whole thing, the team recognizing the fact that this is a very different Brainiac, again, keeps adding that moment of advancement. I like that initially, even when Brainiac shows up, as kind of the image, they're not really sure that it's him because they think it's LL01.
Yeah.
And I liked how the reveal comes in and it's shattered, and we realize, oh wait, this is Brainiac. It was a very, very cool reveal.
Oh God, yeah. And I love how when we first see Brainiac, it is Brainiac by himself, making the end of the book even more of a bigger pop. But yeah, I cheered with that LL01 not actually being Lex. Because I remember when he first got introduced, I was like, oh, that is such a Lex thing. That is brilliant. And I loved it, just because Lex made, Superman have to deal with somebody that's Lex Luthor's face, Lex Luthor's voice, but in the outfit similar to Jor-El. Like, oh, that is so awesome. I love Lex for it, and it turns out it wasn't even Lex. That's one of those things I was like, oh, that makes it even better. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and that with Lex's unique relationship with this particular series and what's been going on with his own Superman corporation that he's been doing. Lex's motivations are coming to light here, gradually in this story. And it's something that I really, really enjoy.
One of the things I really loved about this whole initial sequence where, again, we've got LL01 being turning out to be Brainiac, and just all that, just there's even more hidden stuff that Luthor's not telling everybody. No matter what, and again, you expect Luthor to keep secrets. You expect him to have, little hidden gems. But I love the fact that when, Brainiac told the general to go get the smartest person on the planet, the target was Luthor's daughter, not Luthor. And I thought that for me was one of the great moments of, oh, that is awesome. And then, when he actually do grab her, the look on Lex's face was absolutely just, that right there was perfect. And then, again, great moments, because when you first see Lena seeing Lex, she calls him Lex, not Dad. And even it's like, you can't call me Dad. And then as she's getting snatched up, she's like, Dad, what is happening? Oh, those were some really cool, just brilliant moments of storytelling. Very subtle, very small, nothing too major, but it was enough to give you a good pop, to lay down the groundwork that there's even more to come. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with the whole what's going on between Luthor and Brainiac.
The thing I loved about that sequence, too, is how realistic is that? We all do those stubborn things, right? When you're mad at people or you have resentment, but then when emotion takes over and you don't have the wherewithal to sit there and go, okay, I'm supposed to be acting this way right now. I'm supposed to be bratty in this way right now. I'm stubborn in that way. I like that drop was natural and fit the moment. It actually made you feel a mood and a change in mood in particular. That was cool. That was something that was very, very cool. Brainiac having a reason for this, and it's something that we realize later, that this is something to do with what he knows from the future about her. There's reasonings for everything that he's doing. It was a very, very cool piece.
The Lex Max armor maximum armor on his watch that he's been wearing in prison the whole time, and that he's gotten away with that. Nobody knew he had this massive body armor, built in, force field kind of capacity. I love that. That for me again was one of those wonderful things of another brilliant Lex Luthor moment.
Yeah, and the fact that he only has a few minutes to really have that armor kind of, a few seconds, I should say.
Yeah, 10-second lifespan.
Yeah, exactly. It's something where it's about buying time. It's about buying a moment. And he's counting on the fact of Superman being able to save him in that particular moment. And
actually, no, Superman doesn't save him. The 10 seconds is enough for him to go out the window, crush, one of the Zarians, and then lands on the ground at 1 second. He timed it perfectly so that he landed on the ground. Suit did nothing to save him. That was all pure Lex.
Yeah.
And again, a true Lex moment.
Yeah, and I guess I'm reading too much into Lex's dialogue with Superman. He really was using that to buy some time to start having some dialogue with Superman so they can start communicating. And that's really a more accurate representation, you're right, of what's going on there. The dialogue between the two is great. Being such a big fan of Smallville, one of the things I like about this evolution of them working together in Supercorps and the things that they're doing is when they work together, they are an amazing team. And just think about how much they could accomplish if they were ever able to fully drop what is between them. And we all see that potential. You know that it's never going to be the case because there's always going to be that you can't trust Lex 100% kind of piece. But, we had times where we got to see Lex on the Justice League, which was always intriguing. Yeah. When you see Lex's turn, it's always bittersweet because, I like good guy Lex as good guy, put that in quotes, good guy Lex as much as I like bad guy Lex. He is one of those malleable characters that I think is just so interesting in whatever capacity he's able to play. When you skirt the line but never forget it's Lex Luthor. And that's something I think writers have been able to, over the years, capitalize on the fact that this guy is able to flow between different shades of gray in a very unique and interesting way that I really like.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny. Yes, I completely agree with you. He flows between the line, with that shade of gray. But he is the bad guy in the story. Even though he never will see himself as the bad guy, he is the bad guy. And I love that about him. That, anybody can say, well, there's always going to be an argument. You can always make an argument on Lex. But in the end, he's the bad guy. He's willing to kill. He's willing to take lives just for the betterment of what he feels should happen. Mm-hmm. That sacrificing of life is the true thing that makes him the opposite of Superman. And that is what makes him such a great villain for Superman. In that they each, you can say it's the human versus the Kryptonian. It's the dynamic of brain versus brawn. No, it's the fact that Lex will take a life. Superman will not.
Right.
And I love that notion. It's the same kind of notion that goes on between Bruce and the Joker. Each of them have, that great dynamic, that why there's such these epic villains again, these epic, rivalries between these two is that, that simple faction. And I love seeing that.
Here's the reason why I feel that Lex's dialogue and that buying time is Lex trying to set Superman up to save the day. He's trying to give Superman information, which is he's been trying to prepare him all along because now everything that he's been afraid of is coming to fruition. And he gets to a point later, and I know I'm jumping ahead to it, where he sacrifices himself to keep Superman in play because he feels that Superman can save the day. I feel like there's things that Lex is doing here because he wants Superman. He feels that Superman is the piece that can turn the tides in this because he knows things that are coming. I want to crack open Lex's head and know everything that Lex has seen.
Yes, me too.
And that's really the piece that's interesting here. And that's where I get the vibe off of him I don't mean that he was trying to save Lex from falling, and my timing of mentioning that, kind of fits that sequence. I more mean that Lex is trying to do everything he can to take advantage of time for the purpose of setting Superman up, because he hasn't been forthcoming on everything, which is typical Lex.
Yeah, no.
And so it's an interesting sort of piece with this. Supergirl in this is really great. And I mean, I'm not taking away from any other member of the Superman family when I say that, but because of her history with Brainiac and what we've seen with this Supergirl and Brainiac, she has these key moments. When I was younger, I used to be so afraid of Brainiac, but that was a long time ago. And, she's lashing out and ripping robots apart, and she is trying to be that player that, kind of is changing the game, taking control, and she gets zapped by the Czarnians, and, she's taken out. And the same thing with the other members gradually of the Superman family, including Lois, in a sequence where the look on Superman's face, talk about great artwork, to see the shock, the very mixed emotions where there's a fury, hidden fury, complicated fury to what Superman's doing, because it's not just fury, but there is a fury there, which is something we don't see very often from Superman. I want to clarify that it's not just that emotion, and that's where I think the artist is brilliant. When people are going through a whole bunch of mixed emotions, their face it's very hard to pin down exactly what the heck it's conveying. And I felt like the artist did a great job of conveying complicated emotion in that sequence. Horror, shock, fury, surprise, rage, every little piece of complicated worry, fear. In one facial expression that I think is something that's very, very realistic.
And Lois didn't get snagged. Mm-hmm. It was the two kids that got Othra and Asura. Mm-hmm. The two kids that got snagged. The shot came from behind Lois.
I'm sorry.
Around Lois,
he's responding to her yelling Superman.
Yes.
So that's the shock and the horror and things like that he's hearing is awesome. The shock and the horror because the kid's being taken. I'm sorry, you're 100% correct, but it is him responding to the actual word Superman, or the call of Superman, because it would be his wife doing it versus anybody else who's calling out to Superman.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. And then I love how, it's...
It's funny that you say that in multiple read-throughs. I kept thinking that, because there's that energy wave around Lois. I kept thinking something was happening to Lois there. It's not. It is the kids. You're right.
And again, it goes back to the fact that, the energy, we find out that they're snagging people with powers. So it would naturally go around Lois to target the kids.
Right,
because the kids have the power base. And I thought that was a neat thing where we start seeing all the powers. And it's not just the super family. It's anybody with powers. So they're snagging people from the prison. Mm-hmm. So earlier, these characters that we saw just in passing, they're getting snatched up. And it's again, shows this great, the strategery of Brainiac that I absolutely loved how, again, gang up on Superman. You look at the one panel, there's over a dozen robots attacking him and a bunch of Czarnians. All of them are ganging up on him, and they're not trying to really stop him, other than they're trying to slow him down because they've got to get, they're getting the power people. They're getting, Lena Luthor. They're getting all the different pieces in place that Brainiac wants them to get. But, I do love the fact that Olsen, Mick gets in the mix a little bit, because, the one guy's like, hey, boss said we can kill anybody we want. And this one, I bet, cuts really nice. And Olsen hits him with the flash from the camera. And that, again, moments like that was awesome. And then his girlfriend comes in and she's like, get away from my boyfriend, hits him with the scream. And I loved how she's become now part of this group, part of this family, because of, past issues, because of Olsen, because of that, Clark is trusting her that she's not going to be the bad guy, that she's actually is going to be a good person. And she, of course, has power, so she's getting snatched up. It was a brilliant way to really have emotion. And then again,
what is your history with Silver Banshee?
I don't have a long history. I know about the curse and this and that, and it's the Banshee kind of powers. And I know when they brought her into the mix here, she was initially kind of a villainous type of things, but then her and Olsen he brought out, she's the good person, whereas the curse makes her more evil, but he was able to bring out the good in her and all that kind of wonderful stuff of, the love will conquer all kind of stuff. So, my main understanding of her is a basic kind of person who's got the curse of the Banshee, and when the Banshee comes out, she's not really a good person. But because of Olsen, she's able to be a good person and have the powers now.
Yeah, which is kind of a neat little twist. What do you think about that with her arc and the storyline with her? Do you like her in this capacity?
Oh yeah, I dig this. Again, I'm all for having if you're going to make a villain into a hero, have it tell it through a story arc. You think about the evolution of Catwoman to a good guy, and I did air quotes around the term "good guy" just because it's still Catwoman. She's got the touch of gray, but I loved how they played this out. I love that it was Olsen, because again, I run hot and cold with Jimmy Olsen. And lately, I've been running hot with him. I really digged him. I go back to that first time when he was Olsen Bug, back in '52, and I'm like, okay, this character's kind of cool. And then they started making him a little bit more, less of a dorky kid, more of the photographic journalist. And the photojournalists, they do stupid stuff like this, where you're in the middle of a war zone, and he's snapping pictures because that's what they do, So I love the fact that we're getting more of that version of Jimmy Olsen, and not just the dorky version that used to really annoy me, So we've got a cool Jimmy Olsen. So I'm very happy that it's him who did this, who's part of this story arc, So yeah, I'm digging this.
The Superman fighting the Cesarnians was a really cool bit. He's asking all the right questions, like, why are you teamed up together? Because it is an interesting, unique pairing. We find out later why they're teamed up together, but the general and him goading Superman, as far as saying, hey, you had one planet of peace and prosperity that still went boom. It must be scary to think you could lose another. And Superman kind of lashing out, recognizing that this is a very different level of invasion. I absolutely loved this sequence because Superman, a lot of times, we forget how intelligent of a character he is. I love when he plays people. This goes back to, I love Superman 2. And it's either version of it. We have that same sequence where he loses his powers, and he appears to go into that unit where he's going to quote unquote lose his powers, and he does a swerve on the villains on the outside. Yeah. This goes back to my childhood with this Superman he was letting them hold him and made it look like they had got the one up on him when he was laying there just to get information. This is a guy who has worked with the best and the best of heroes. He is going to have skills of his own, but also thinks he's picked up with also working with those other heroes. It's one of Batman's best friends. And I really liked how that played out in a very unique Superman way.
And it was even multiple layers of, because I agree completely with the playing, because you think about it, when he blasts the general, that wasn't full heat vision.
No.
But he had to make it look like it was full heat vision, so the general's like, this guy's nothing. He ruined my vest, but I'm fine. This is nothing. I heard stories about this Kryptonian. So again, multiple layers of the play. And it goes back to how many times has Clark had to be a bit dorky and slouch over and hunch over and do different physical body stuff so people don't think he's Superman. So Superman is used to playing people. He's used to letting himself seem like he's weaker than he actually is. So again, like you, I love this moment. And again, I love that Lex jumped in the beam. And Lex took the beam for Superman, knowing Superman can't get caught. Superman has to be free. He's the only one who can save. He's the only one who can save us now. And I loved that realization from Lex. And I love the fact that I don't completely trust that was all of Lex's motivation, because I know Lex Luthor. He's got a different ace up his sleeve that he's planning to play, and I'm like, yes, But on the surface, it looked absolutely perfect.
This is a really interesting story because it wraps up with Superman flying back, of course, to Lois, and the two of them kind of having that meeting, and Superman recognizing, of course, if we've got Lobo's people, who is the best person to help you with that and to give you information, it's got to be Lobo. But the real reveals on the final page where we've got the various different versions of Brainiac that are there. And this is going to be a pivotal point of this story, is just how long these characters have been in play, and the mystery still being in play as far as what are they actually doing here. He's not only seeking all the knowledge, but he's seeking something more. And I really like that aspect of this story where it feels like something different, and it really stood out for me. From this, we do have a backup story that's in Green Lantern, which, if we can talk about that briefly for a little bit, it's a backup story with Guy Gardner, where Guy Gardner is seeking out Lobo. And we'll be talking more about this particular story in the next few episodes. But I really like the artwork of it. I like Kevin McGuire's artwork, having that JLI kind of feel to the story. What did you think about the Guy Gardner backup story?
Come on, it's always awesome seeing Guy in action.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Guy now. Again, he's another one of those characters that when he first hit the scene, I did not like him, and over time they've really, evolved him, and they've evolved him without getting rid of the true Guy Gardner. So it's like they didn't want to change him, and change his personality, change his character, but you kind of get a little bit more explanation as to why he does some of the stuff he does. And you see some of the reasons he does the swagger, he does the arrogance, is so that the bad guys target him and not his teammates. I love just that little subtle thing, because it was in a discussion, one of the Green Lantern stories. I can't remember where it was, where they were all gathering, and it was Guy was dead, and they were basically hanging out at the bar talking Guy stories, and one of them brought up the fact that he always used to do that. He always used to antagonize it, so he'd be the one who took the first shot. So they would attack him and go after him. And I love just seeing, just this little subtle Guy Gardner, and again, just how confident, arrogant, whatever you want to call it, that he is. And it was an absolute brilliant, fun little couple quick pages that, the final ending when Lobo does the whistle and you see Lobo's cavalry coming in. I remember when they first introduced this concept, I cheered. I was like, oh, that is cool.
I did like when he reached out to Booster Gold. He went to Skeets, not Booster Gold.
Yeah.
I thought, because he didn't really reach out to Booster. There was something really cool about that. It was a fun little story in this, and I'm anxious to read more as it goes along, but I liked it as a initial tie-in. Can we just jump to Power Girl, as long as we're talking about tie-ins, and then we'll jump back to Superman? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
So we had our first initial Power Girl issue, which was Power Girl number 8, I believe. Am I right on that one?
Correct.
I'm right on the issue number. So Power Girl number 8 was the issue that was the first issue that was kicking off as a part of this, and we get a chance to see some of Power Girl and Crush in this particular sequence. But also, it's going in real time with the issue that we just read. Lois has got her day off. Power Girl's kind of interacting with that day off. And then this all starts to happen, and Power Girl's pulled into it. I love her cat. because we got the cat again with the history of Supergirl / Power Girl having a cat of some sort. Her relationship with Omen is really cool. It would be hard to have a relationship with with somebody with mental powers where they can read your mind. Having a trusting relationship with that person would be a challenge and be difficult. I like that this relationship in this particular issue addresses some of that, because you don't want to abandon those type of relationships, but it is something where setting up ground rules and expectations of what that relationship is. That was something that really stood out to me as being a very cool part of this story. I believed in it a great deal. I think, can imagine one of us had the ability to read minds. It would be kind of, it's a game changer. If we're doing this podcast right now and I'm reading your mind, you're going to get a little bit ticked off because it's going to kind of like, dude, some of those thoughts I don't want out there. I don't want you to know. I've got things running around in my head that I need to revise and decide on what my presentation's going to be. You don't need to know all that. Let me make the decisions on what you know and what you don't. And this addresses all of that.
The psychic jerk jar.
Yes, I really, really like that, where it's something they're continuing to evolve. But also Power Girl trying of addressing relationships. In the superhero universe, it is very, very hard to have a relationship. And it's been a while since we've seen Power Girl try to even navigate a relationship. And, the idea that she wants to have one with Axel, or wants to at least, dip a toe into a relationship like that with Axel. And because of Brainiac-like circumstances, that conversation only goes so far as she's more and more enveloped into this whole situation, which was something I thought was really, really cool. I like that this was, you don't have to read this in order to understand what's going on, but man, if you would like to see this from another angle and give you a bigger picture of what the overall world of the DC Universe is when Power Girl's interacting, I like that this story with Power Girl starts to open the doorway with, we've got other people with powers being pulled. Power Girl's not one of them. And there's a very real reason for that. And it was something that I really liked that this helped to establish.
Yes. Well, and again, that was a really cool thing. Everybody's getting pulled up. They scan her and don't take her. I was like, what? Wait, that's Power Girl. Why would you not want to take her if you're scanning for powers?
Yeah, absolutely. And Superman explaining, because she's from a different Earth, that she is going to just be, in a different vibrational plane, which is something that goes back to the original history of the multiverse and the original Flashes. I thought that part was really, really clever. The idea that there's some Cesarnians that are like, listen, I want to escape all this. I gotta, Brainiac's not going to miss a few of us. Let's kind of sneak out. Whether or not that's actually going to be the case doesn't necessarily matter. I like the idea that there's some Cesarnians that are like, okay, this is a good opportunity to get out and get away from Brainiac, especially as we find out more about what is going on with them. And I might as well just say it because we're going to be talking about this one. They've been trapped in a little bit of a jar. So there's a reason for them to be looking for escape, and for them to take advantage of it there made a ton of sense.
Yes, and I did like the initial fight between, and I did air quotes around fight because it didn't last too long, between Crush and PG. That was it's interesting seeing PG get taken down so quickly.
Yeah.
But again, one, she's not 100% thinking clearly. Two, the chain got some magic to it. So magic's a weakness for them. And three, Crush is a pretty good badass. So I'm digging seeing where that, team up goes, because it's going to, go positive. Because Crush isn't evil bad. She's just a little bit chaotic.
Yes. Yeah, that's the best way to put it, too, isn't it? Not exactly evil bad, but certainly a little bit more chaotic. Jim, let's start talking about a little bit more about Superman number 13, because we're heading a little bit more into this story and what's happening. Superman number 13 is, of course, still Joshua Williamson. The artist is Rafa Sandoval. We got Alejandro Sanchez on colors, letters Ariana Mayer. Rafael Sandoval and Alejandro Sanchez on the covers. Variant covers, Liber Mayo. Sebastian, it's Fiumara. Jerry Gaylord and Alan Qua. Artist, Spotlight cover artist, Jim Lee and FCO Placencia. April Fools, and it's Ape, A-P-E, yeah. Real Fools variant cover artists, Maria Wolf and Mike Spicer. Assistant editor is Jillian Grant. Editor is Paul Kaminsky. And, of course, as you've mentioned earlier, Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Superboy created by Jerry Siegel. Supergirl based on the characters created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. This issue is pretty important because it starts to set the stage for the Warriors Bar in Coast City, bringing Lobo into the scene. I was ready for Lobo at this point. And seeing how he's going to end up playing into all of this. We move pretty quickly because Superman's already seeking him out. Lobo's in the middle of a bar fight. All of a sudden, Superman comes in, and he is mad. His entire family, powered family, has been taken. And Superman is really upset about this piece. Which leads to the initial confrontation between the two that... I like that it ended pretty quickly, but it was, and I think the main man isn't overly shocked that that is going to happen, but he's picking up that Superman is in a very, very different mood. This is a Superman, the fight is going faster because Superman is not settling for nonsense right now. That distinction is really good because Lobo's dialogue of, hey, what's gotten into you, super jerk? That piece is him recognizing something different. These are two that have encountered each other before. I like the distinction here. That is very good writing, and the artwork matches it.
Oh, big time. And again, Lobo's thinking, okay, this is just going to be me and Soup throwing around because Lobo likes a good fight. He likes a good violence. Soup can give it to him, but he's not thinking it's going to be anything serious. And the fact that Soup opens with the heat vision, blasting him in the face is like, hey, you finally learned to fight dirty. I love it. He's just about to continue. Soup grabs him by the neck. Where is Brainiac? Just that level of intensity. And I loved how, the fact that Lobo, again, he's one of those highly bravado characters, one of those, the main man kind of thing, but he's not a complete idiot. He's able to recognize immediately something is different with Clark. Something's going on here, which would lend to him not continuing the fight, which would lend to him actually talking it out. Normally, it would take a while for Lobo to get bored of actually doing the fight and then say, okay, let's talk. Lobo recognizes something different here and modifies what he's doing. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
And let me clarify something. I'm not a big Lobo fan. When it comes to Lobo, he's one of those characters that I've never really digged. I've never really the main man. I never really liked that. For some reason, he just didn't click on me. But, it's one of those people that I understand who he is, and I understand some of the stuff about him. And this right here was absolutely brilliant. This right here made me a fan of Lobo.
From the era that he was, though, that totally fits Lobo. Lobo comes from a very distinctive era, and he definitely is a character that fits that time. I felt like this did a really good job of honoring his history while bringing him a little bit more current. I don't know if you were feeling the same vibe off of this. I felt like this Lobo is kind of aligning a little bit more to feeling more today. Am I wrong on that? I don't know. That was the vibe I got, because I feel like a lot of reading that I do with Lobo, and maybe you're in a different place with this, felt like Lobo sometimes feels like very much... It's strange to say that he feels sometimes dated, but for me, dated might not be the right word. He certainly feels like he's trapped in like the 90s and kind of his time, if that makes sense.
No,
very, very much a grunge kind of hero, or grunge anti-hero, if that makes sense. And there's something about him in this that feels like it honors that. The look is a little bit different, like slightly tweaked. The hair's even a little bit different, if it makes sense. But but feels contemporary. And I don't know if I'm making any sense at all off of that piece. I guess I'm appreciating how much I wasn't focused on what I sometimes focus on with Lobo is, okay, here we come. We got Grunge Boy here. I loved Lobo like back in his day, but he wasn't one of those characters that I like latched onto heavily when he was super popular. A lot of that was due to budget. I found that I grew into appreciation of him later on. I like him even more now in this presentation, because I feel like a concerted effort was made to try and find a sweet spot with him that I think works here.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, I'm agreeing with you that this Lobo, and especially the way he's handled here and a couple of the other issues coming up, have been a really cool usage of Lobo. And I'm like becoming a Lobo fan, Now, I love when we go from that cool fight sequence back then to Brainiac, and they're talking a little bit more about Brainiac, building up what is going on with Brainiac. And the live wire sequences were absolutely brilliant. Because, again, you got Livewire, who's over-the-top, bravado, shock, jockery at its finest. And I love when they really go all into that. And she's all high and mighty. You'll hear from my lord. And is yelling. And then that first zap. And just drains out of her. And she's like, stop, please. Just really soft. And you're like, oh, that one hurt. That is just... He broke her in one zap, or maybe it's been multiple zaps and it finally got to her. But it seems to me like that was one zap on such a deep energy draw level, that they did to her, that they drained her to her soul.
Yeah. That was something that was really interesting on this piece. I like Livewire a lot. Were you a fan of Superman the Animated Series?
Yeah.
And Livewire in that, yes. I guess is really where I'm going. So I really appreciated how this character's continued to evolve in comics, because I'm a big fan of the character. I got to know her a lot more through Superman the Animated Series, got to really enjoy her in comics, and this character's another example of a character who has evolved. A lot of what I said about Lobo, I feel that they've done a good job with Livewire, too. Not losing the core of what makes this character interesting, but not feeling like this character is stuck into who this character was in the animated series. Harley Quinn, I think you can kind of make the same kind of thing with, where she came out of one medium and, was, prominent in one medium and prominent in one time, and you've needed to kind of figure out, well, how does she work today? And I think DC's doing, or the talent at DC's doing a really good job at taking these characters and recognizing there's a fan base that has known them for a long time. There's a fan base that maybe didn't grow with them at the same time, and trying to find that place where we all can understand them today. And that part's fun. But her and Parasite, who are energy, one's a siphon, the other one gives off energy. Him using these, there's a plan that Brainiac has here, and he's got an end game, a very, very clear end game. And these characters have all been captured and are being used for the purpose of him building. After all my travels, I have obtained the knowledge of everything. All secrets have been unlocked for me across time, space, and the multiverse. And yet something is missing. I have studied the patterns and data and have come to the conclusion that I must, and that's when he starts to collapse, because he's talking about creating something and he collapses. We're seeing there's something wrong. And everyone's kind of witnessing what's happening here, and the other Brainiacs kind of rush onto the scene. I think they've seen this before. It's very, very clear. There's something wrong there. And he's building towards something, this creation. This is a great way to build towards, why is he looking for this creation? What is he looking from this creation? What is his path? What is his end game here? This is the way to build a mystery. And give you a sense that this is that Brainiac. This is the Brainiac we've been reading all along. This is the Brainiac that has been around for a long, long time. There are visible signs of all of the travels, all of the journeys, everything he has done. is visibly here. And I like that sense of, I've done all of this. What's next? And Brainiac's always been driven by obsession, right?
Yeah.
So this is his next obsession, which...
this is Brainiac Prime.
Yes.
I do like the distinction that this is Prime. So they immediately, because that's something else that Brainiac has had a problem with following authorities.
Yes.
But all the other Brainiacs are following this one. They're recognizing him as a leader. We're not going to get a story where, I don't think we'll get a story where the Brainiacs turn on each other, and that's how the heroes can get a victory out of it. They are following Prime. He's their alpha. So it's kind of neat seeing that, especially because he is in this weakened state. A lot of times you would think a leader would need to have this powerful display, but not for these guys. This is about intellect. This is about the grand plan, the strategy, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So they recognize this Brainiac as their prime. So I thought that was a neat little notion.
The Superman and Supercorp, there was the Supercorp ending that was over there with Lex, where I like that Mercy's recognizing there's a conversation to be had with Lex. Hey, everybody wants the same answer that we do. Lex, what is it exactly that you saw? What do you know? Because we haven't gotten that full reveal yet. Why did you make Supercorp? Why were you doing the things that you were? And Clark and Lois having that point in time where they're having that meeting, and Lois is kind of giving them the marching orders. Go get our family, go get our babies, and kick Brainiac's ass. That sequence was really, really great. The main man in this one is totally working for me. The reason for the distinction with that, I know I'm being a little redundant with that, is sometimes I find Lobo annoying.
Yeah.
And just kind of a blunt piece over that. I think there's times where he's incredibly well written. There's other times where he is that character. The guy that I find annoying is there. It's kind of what you talked about before with Guy Gardner, right? Guy Gardner's that character where sometimes he can be written very annoying and irritating. That's not bad writing. It's the intended use of the character at that time. So I'm not knocking writing in the past with him, but it does lead to a vibe when Lobo's around. I typically think of him kind of the same way I do Guy Gardner at times. This is a great use of this character, whereas I want to see the Superman and Lobo team up. This is really working for me here. He has those personality quirks where I can be sitting there I feel this is an example of where Lobo makes me feel like I'm riding with Superman.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of analyzing the way that Superman is in that moment. I recognize the need for him. I'm like, okay, I want him there too. But yet, I feel like I'm more Team Superman and not anti-Lobo. Because I want Lobo's backstory, and you can kind of see that this general is like the original OG. This is somebody who Lobo likely has modeled himself after. And yet Lobo's all in on this piece because he's Lobo. And, he's kind of used at this point to having his own, code's not the right word, but his own mode of operating, shall we say. And he's not ready to jump on board of Team Cesarnian just because of the fact that they're on the scene. The sequence where the two of them go off in the vehicles is just way cool. I grew up as a kid with the Corgi Superman Supermobile. Did you have that as a kid? The two fists?
No, I never had the Supermobile.
I did, and I always loved that vehicle. It's such a crazy thing to sit there and say. Batmobiles and things like that were always a fond memory. The Supermobile was also a fond memory of me as a kid. And for some reason, I just loved playing with that, even though you think Superman's this invincible guy. What does he need a vehicle for? Supermobile was cool. As a kid, they had these fists and things like that kind of punched out, and you thought it was super cool. Die-cast, it was really neat. This isn't the Supermobile, but when the scientists are helping them with this way to get past the United Planets blockade to get out of there. Well, and they think they're helping them pass that. There's more at work here. And we do see that later in some of our storytelling we're going to be chatting about here, that that window was opened for some reason. It was given a very, very brief window opening. There's more to be revealed as we go forward, but Superman and the main man kind of flying through, and Superman even trying to remind Lobo, like, hey, we got to make it through here so we get to our end goal. Let's be very careful how we are doing this. That conversation thread between the two of them and how to... these are the last two guys together that I'm looking at as my stealth team. And that's no knock on Superman. It's just kind of like you're like bringing a bomb with you to a stealth party. And I really liked the banter between the two of them, that it was more than just him scolding Lobo. Them connecting over the fact that they have kids was something that was interesting. Superman found something intriguing about that piece. How do you feel about that, Lobo? And him sharing stories from when, what my father used to say, and those pieces. I thought that dialogue made Lobo even more likable for me. I found myself really liking Lobo during all of this, which is not something I say very often. This was really, really good.
I love the sequence where they're talking about how Lobo comments on exactly what we said before about just the level of rage that Superman had going. Yeah, Superman's been mad at Lobo before, but this was something deeper. It was it was in your eyes. That presence of rumbling inside you. When somebody walks into a room and you can feel the air change around you. That's you right now, and I'm digging it. And I was like, that is an outstanding just analogy of what is going on, the rage, the anger, the fire inside Soup. And I love the fact that that's one of the things that Lobo's like, all right, let's do this. Again, Lobo kind of does have his own code, and I'm not looking. I don't see him double crossing Soup or anything like that.
I don't either.
And I don't even see him abandoning the fight. Lobo's into the end. So I think that is a cool moment, and that's going to be a cool, that's something cool about him. And I love these two are going, they're riding in there, both on their space hogs. I was like, yeah, I was cheering about the fact that, Lobo's got his ride, Soup's got his version of it. So it's a cleaner version. It's kind of like a Harley and a Katana riding side by side, but it's still, they're both blights.
You want to be the main man, you got to beat the main man. I'm a huge fan of, we both are fans of wrestlers and Ric Flair and all those pieces. I liked the little wink and a nod to that. And Lobo kind of going against the guy that was kind of his predecessor, his hero, his idol in that sequence was really, really well done. The final sequence with, or the sequence, I shouldn't say it's the final sequence, but the sequence with Luthor and Brainiac, where we get to see these two that have been on the same side. Kind of talking through the fact that Luthor's seen certain things, and Luthor's like, hey, I'm going to try to bargain with you. I can give you, leave my daughter out of this, I'll help you. I can give you Superman, all of those pieces. And Brainiac is not having it. Brainiac's like continuing down his pathway of kind of holding all the pieces. And I thought that was something that was really cool. One of my favorite characters in this, and I mentioned it earlier, was Supergirl. Because I like that she's got this history with Brainiac. She's not giving up. She's somebody who has grown in advance. She's overcome her fears. And she's using that Brainiac head from before as a way to kind of craft a way out of her predicament. And she and Superboy are shrunk down, right? Are they tiny now because of what they've done? Because isn't that Brainiac's giant feet behind them?
I think so. I think they've been shrunk down as well.
Okay.
I think again it's the classic glass bottle thing, and it's not. In Luthor, they process. It's Lana that they go to process.
But Lena's there, isn't she, too?
Lena's there.
Right.
And Luthor says, hey, if you agree to leave my daughter out of this, I can give you Superman.
Right.
And that's when Lana's like, hey, Lex, what are you doing? And so Brainiac's like, process this one next.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that. I wasn't saying that was Lena.
Okay.
In that sequence, I was more saying that Brainiac, in spite of Luthor's negotiating, is still continuing on with his plans right now.
Yes.
I did not think that that was Lena Luthor. I wasn't saying that. I said, and I meant what I said, that Brainiac was continuing on with his plans, because he is still, it's not just what he did to Lana there. He was continuing on with his plans with everybody there. Supergirl takes advantage of that, what's going on there, as a way to escape the situation. But she was expecting to have, I think, some powers back. They're still tiny, but they don't have any powers. And that's a piece where she's kind of shocked. She's like, oh no, our powers are still gone. And
Connor's like, I think we have a smaller problem.
Right. Yeah, which was a kind of a cool ending. I'm sorry. You're right. The way that I said that, it made it sound like I was thinking that was Lena. I was not implying that. I more meant that Brainiac, in spite of Luthor's pleading, he's not stopping what he's doing because Luthor's negotiating a different way of operating. He's like still going forward. I think he's listening to what Luthor's saying, but basically this plan that he's driven for is nothing is going to stop Brainiac from achieving his goal. He might divert. Like, I feel like he's entertaining. If it helps to move forward his goal, he will entertain what Lex is saying. But I feel like he has zero allegiance to Lex. I feel like anything he says to Lex isn't going to matter. He will continue moving forward anyway, even if he agrees to go along with what Lex is saying temporarily. He will turn on Lex instantly because he's Brainiac, and his goals, his obsessions, just like capturing all the knowledge. And we've seen him with this, so we'll talk more about it, where Brainiac will, no matter how you negotiate with him, continue to gather knowledge and continue to gather the pieces that he wants to gather, in spite of whatever you try to negotiate with him with, because that end goal is more important to him than honor. Like, he doesn't care about honor, he doesn't care about relationships or friendships or things like that. He cares about cataloging, gathering knowledge at all costs. Now it's this something more is just as much a part of who he is, and that creation that he's going for is driving everything. And I really like that we're not seeing Brainiac's not changing who he is just organically kind of evolving and responding to this wanting to become something more, and still kind of behaving in the way that only Brainiac does.
He still is Brainiac.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the cool things about with this evolution, that, yeah, they're changing the character, but it's not anything that makes you go, oh, they changed Brainiac. He's still Brainiac. It's kind of like whenever they do some of the evolutions of the Joker, when they do, little tweaks on him, they're like, oh, it's still the Joker. He's still that, he's still who he is. So I'm happy with this. And again, this is a wonderful villain who I don't think he's gotten as much legit press time as like Luthor or some of Clark's other villains. But he is just as dangerous, You think back to the Nicolas Cage Superman movie that never happened. The main villain was going to be a version of Brainiac. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we've ever really seen a good Brainiac, in other media, in live media. That it would have been kind of interesting to see how they played the character off.
We get kind of a version of him in Smallville.
Yeah.
Did you like the Smallville version of him?
Yes. But again, it's been so long since I've seen the Smallville one of him.
Yeah. I enjoyed the Smallville version of him. It's not. Here's the thing. Let's separate that now. I separate that. I should say. You don't necessarily have to. Separating that. Smallville had its own kind of variation as far as how it was tackling a lot of these characters, and I really liked how Smallville did it. And they kind of went like a T2 almost version of Brainiac with what they were doing. And I really liked how that character played out there. But to your point, he is a character that has a much richer DC history. Particularly, I grew up like reading various Silver Age comics of Superman. They came from flea markets and beat up. I'm a broken record kind of talking about those pieces. But I read a lot more Superman than probably I ever allude to growing up. they were broken issues. It was like an issue here, an issue there. Brainiac was a regular occurrence, just as much as Lex Luthor was. I mean, Lex obviously was more prominent, but Brainiac is somebody that stands out from my childhood in more of the traditional look of Brainiac, with the kind of the headgear look to him and more of the, I guess, kind of a purplish outfit. And, traditional, you've seen the traditional Silver Age Brainiac
the traditional
outfit.
look, yeah.
I'm poorly pointing out what it looks like, but the traditional Silver Age Brainiac look was something I was very, very well aware of growing up. You're right, though, live action wise, there hasn't been a great Brainiac that really matches the comic book version of him. So let's talk a little bit about the House of Brainiac special, because this one is an interesting issue, because what it is a collection of short stories that kind of flesh out this House of Brainiac world. So the first story we open up with is the Secrets of Czarnia, this Chapter 1 Secrets of Czarnia piece, where we get to a little bit more about the history of Czarnia and what the world was like, because it was actually, to a certain extent, there's elements of it that are a lot like Krypton. A lot more parallels to Krypton, where there is almost like this more advanced, peaceful, like society. But then there is that general who was the previous main man. He's almost like this world's Zod. I'm oversimplifying because it is that, but like to different levels of extremes. But I really like this idea of this world that on the surface seems to have a little bit more of a another layer to it that I didn't. I guess Lobo's kind of given me an image of what I think of Czarnians. And when I see these other versions of them, I'm like, wait, what? There's something more here? I like that. I don't know how much this is true to previous comic history with the characters, but certainly to kind of bring me up to speed with this is how we're viewing, at least now, Czarnia. I really like the history lesson of it. It just kind of added another layer of when they do specials like this and they do stories that are like big events. I like when we have specials that have these anthology style stories that you could skip if you want to, but if you read them, they add another layer of depth. And this does this very well. The Czarnia piece, I didn't know that I wanted to read about the history of Czarnia as much as I did when I read this. And I'm like, this is really good. I'm like intrigued by this world.
Big time. And this really did add to this. This is one of those things where it really helped me like Lobo more. As I said, when we were talking last issue, I'm becoming a Lobo fan. This really locked it in because the concept of the fact that they figured out the key to immortality. Mm-hmm. And that means with that immortality could come peace and this and that. But there's this rogue section of them who just wanted violence, who just wanted chaos.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that is so cool. And again, you make a deal with Brainiac. Okay, he made a deal with them. Didn't completely honor the deal, but he did in a way. I love just that notion of how you have this, the society wanting to be peaceful, and they figured, hey, we get rid of this rogue element and we will live a peaceful life. Then, of course, that leads to Lobo showing up, who kills them all off. But I loved how this played out, and I love that we see why and when Brainiac took this city, took this group away from the Czarnians.
The Trib character and the idea of, it's funny with him trying to catalog everything like he does. It's almost like he took this cross section of Czarnia that was like the most violent cross section, but kind of left and laid waste. Well, it looks like he's taking the knowledge bank of that other section, because he went in, they're gathering the knowledge. So he didn't catalog them. I guess he only took the physical cross-section of that one city, but grabbed all the knowledge bank of Trib's people. And which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I guess I'm kind of answering my own question. At first, I'm kind of like, well, it seems kind of short-sighted of Brainiac to only take the one city, but the betrayal is because he couldn't just take the one city in order to catalog everything he wanted to catalog. Yep. So I'm kind of answering my own question as far as like, why did Brainiac kind of do only the one city? Because he was going to just destroy and take the knowledge bank from everything else anyway.
Yep. Well, and the knowledge for him and him alone. And again, it's this whole pursuit and building of the knowledge. So as we're tweaking Brainiac, we're still keeping him true to who Brainiac is and what he's about. And I loved, again, this would build up more on the Brainiac story, got you wondering and looking more at how he's motivated. Plus, it gave us some cool backstory on the General, gave us even some more backstory on Lobo, where he comes from. So I loved this opening story. This right here was a great story to start this off with.
The Perry White story was a really good one, too. I always love the bar. I always love Bibbo and seeing kind of his whole relationship with Superman. The nice part about this is we do get a nice little history of Bibbo in this sequence. We get a little bit more of an insight into Perry White as a mayoral candidate and what makes him, like, he's kind of a fish out of water when it comes to politics, but not the city. And you get an idea that there's ideologies and a divide in Metropolis. I want to be very careful in how I say this because I'm not trying to equate it with our current left and right. So please take what I'm saying here with a caveat. I think one of the things that I really like about this is Metropolis is a city we all know and love, right? It has a similar divide right now to what our country has in the sense that there are two distinct groups of people, two distinct ideologies, and they are not meeting in the middle. And I feel that that is very representative of what's going on in our country right now. So I'm not trying to link, Perry White with either Biden or Trump or Gordon or Garen Blake with either one of them either, because they aren't those same people and they aren't intended to be those exact same ideologies. But I feel like there are echoes of things that are going on in our country right now that are causing a divide in Metropolis that I do think is clearly meant to be reminiscent of some of the divide in our country right now. And I like when art imitates life and you can kind of learn something from it. And we do get that in this divide and the way that they're rallying and the violence and the way that they're treating each other and the way they're even treating the aliens in this sequence. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Oh, big time. And I love when Bebo's giving us her background. He said one time the campaign manager told him there's two kinds of candidates. Charismatics, people who voters gravitate to without understanding why, and crusaders, those who pound on a single issue until everyone knows exactly why they're voting for him. Perry White's neither. I love that notion of that's not who Perry White is. And as we see, Perry White is fighting a downhill battle on us. He is, the fish, the big-time fish out of water. Political amateur joins the race. Exactly was the headline that the Daily Planet said about Perry White. And I love the fact that we're seeing this go on where Perry is out of his element. And he's not as smooth and slick as Garen Blake is. And, but you do see who Perry White is. You do see him step up. You do see him say, hey, this is it. I'm here to fight for Metropolis. I'm not here to, beef up my political career. I'm not here to take people's money. I'm here for this city. And I love just that notion of who, Perry White is becoming, as this issue is going on, you can see him getting sick with all the stuff that, is going on. And you're like, okay, it's time to fight now. Let me show you who I am. That, for me, was a brilliant side of this. And like you said, you can't say either side is one side or the other because they're not. But it is a really cool analysis of the political environment where each side is attacking the other side. Each side is saying the other side is evil, the other side is evil, the other side is evil. Instead of saying, this is what we got to do, people. No one is talking about how do we unite the country. Everyone's talking about my agenda, my agenda. Both sides are doing it. And I love seeing the fact that we see a candidate in Perry who says, let's unite. We need to work together. We need to be Metropolis. And I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that stood out to me as well. That piece is truly unique. I want to be clear off of this. I'm carefully dancing around this because I'm a big believer when stories start addressing politics and start addressing some of really what's going on in life. There's an opportunity for us all to learn something, no matter where you fall. Today's left, today's right, people that fall kind of somewhere in the middle. I think this is an example of you've got two different ideologies. The only solution is for them to find a way to reach across and start coming together in some capacity. We see that the divide is actually hurting everybody in this, and I like that part of the story because it gives us something to think about. So I give them credit for this Perry White story because I feel like we are having a lot of trouble talking in this capacity, I think, as a society right now. So when stories do this, it can't help but get you thinking. And I like that. I really enjoyed the fact that it was doing that and just making me think and try to follow both of these characters, understand what's going on in this world. It's clearly got its own ideas about things, and that's okay. I think stories kind of will bring that out in you. I did find myself very protective of the aliens in this because I thought the mom and the cute kid were really interesting. I like the mom's recognizing, you aren't watching that, telling the kid that. And yet the curiosity of a child will always win out. I really enjoyed the reality of that. Like, you want to get closer to something like this and see what's really going on because you've been told not to. And that was something that really worked for me with the kid that I thought was a really good part of the story because it felt like something alien, not otherwise. The mom and the alien kid felt very human. And I think when you do that, it adds something where there's a vulnerability to them that is really important. At a time where we as a country, we try to put labels on groups of people and just kind of categorize people based on overarching umbrella labels instead of getting down to looking at individuals and recognizing that not all individuals are the same. And just because individuals are part of a particular group and things like that doesn't mean they should all be shoved into that group. There are people that are here from other places and things like that that are productive, active members of our society and that should be respected. And this is part of what the story is trying to address here. I thought it was way cool. Cool story in the way that it's doing. It's very clever.
And I loved the Lois and Perry moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, right before the big debate, and Lois gives him the Lois Lane pep talk. I love that. Don't be a train wreck up there. I guess what I'm saying in Lois Lane's speak is that we need you. I love just that moment, and then that's when you see the flip on Perry. He's like, hey, I'm in over my head. Yeah, I don't know how to run for office. I don't know how to read polls. I can't even kiss a decent baby. But there's one thing I know for decades of running a newspaper, something Garen Blake couldn't possibly understand. And what is that? This town. I love just that moment. I love when he ties his tie and he looks at her and goes, nice pep talk, Chief, and calls her Chief. That, for me, was just a great moment, great banter between these two longtime friends, colleagues, whatever you want, family. I love this. This right there was the beginning of the fight. I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool, man.
Yeah, and it was something that was really important to me. I really enjoy when those type of things end up happening in these type of stories. Bibbo's background was super cool. In this piece, I love seeing the black and white sequences, which were kind of cool. Mm-hmm. The artwork it reminds me as kids of a cross of to a certain extent, it's got some of the elements of Popeye cartoons in a weird way that kind of really match kind of my childhood. And there's something innocent about those pieces. I love that milk is kind of the connecting thread, right? Of why milk is a part of what is being served there. and how milk is available for kids, not just for him, but was available for Superman. And that piece all just worked out really great. But seeing that Bibbo has been through and seen a lot of change in Metropolis was something that I thought was really cool. I also like that in many cases the bar becomes like almost this, not completely neutral ground, but Bibbo allowing people to pop in even though he's clearly Team Perry. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, you can come on still, it's right now it's whatever you need it to be, that kind of thing. It's very, very interesting to see that particular piece of this. I love when I think stories like this are bold. I think, I think in some cases they skirt the line of they're going to anger some people. That's okay. Make some people uncomfortable. Other people are going to make you go, And I like all of those variations. I think that's something where it's representative, I think, of where we're at right now as a country. And I think that's okay to do that kind of thing because that's realistic. That feels very now. And with what's going on in House of Brainiac, it is more of a shocking story and more of a connecting story if we feel like this is our world. And I thought this story did a really great job of making me feel much more like this is our world. So then we head into Chapter 3, The Signal, and now we're kicking into the wall.
Yeah, the wall.
Yeah. And, seeing her and her interactions and finding out that this group, that the Council of Light and who they really are is finally being revealed as Brainiac Prime. And there's actually a shot there next to Brainiac Prime of the Brainiac that I'm talking about. That's the more of the Silver Age look on the left of the Silver Age Brainiac look. That's the one I grew up with as a kid. Much more common to see that Brainiac. And I really liked that whole sequence where this is going to be interesting. The Wall was standing toe-to-toe with Brainiac. I'm going to be interested to see where this story goes. Obviously, this is leading in, and one of the reasons why we chose to do this story is because it does lead into Absolute Power. So we're going to have some conversations as we lead into, we're going to do Absolute Power. Our plan is to do House of Brainiac. We're going to do 2 more weeks of House of Brainiac. We're going to jump over to Blood Hunt over at Marvel.
Yes. And
then come back and do Absolute Power. So, we kind of do this kind of rotation that we're doing of jumping between companies. We wanted to do the summer events and just kind of see how we feel about summer events between multiple companies and what they look like. This is one, though, that I felt like we needed to touch on because of it. And this idea of this Brainiac story where we're getting to see Brainiac's creation starting to be created here is kind of a nice ending for this story. And obviously got more to say about this Amanda Waller story. I want you to be able to say it. But I felt like this kind of cliffhanger at the end is like the perfect way for us to kind of wrap up because we get our first real look at Brainiac's creation right here at the end of this special, which is kind of 2.5 of this piece, which leads to just as many questions as it does answers.
Yes. Oh, big time. And again, I love the fact that the Council of Light was Brainiacs. When they first appeared, and we're like, who could that be? I don't know. Who could that be? None of us thought, oh, yeah, it's Brainiac.
Never in a million years.
I loved that they completely swerved us on that. And I remember we said something like, it's probably somebody we know. These are probably people we know. And we're thinking, maybe it's probably villains or, never once throughout a group of Brainiacs.
Right, exactly. I totally agree.
I love that about this story. And again, I love the fact that the Wall is the Wall. There is such, when you write the Wall, you got to make sure you cover her. You got to make sure you do her proper. This story, this whole House of Brainiac has really done that with any and all character that they show. Any character that they display, they're really giving us a true understanding of who they are. The Wall right here was absolutely brilliant in that she figured out who it was, and she was angry that he lied to her and he used her. But the whole time she's using him as well. But that's okay because it's for the Wall's purposes. She can't be used. She can't be manipulated. She's the one who does the manipulation. And I love the fact that that's one of the main things that really is getting on her. Just really getting on her, the fact that he had the nerve to try to use the Wall.
Yeah. And that part is really, really interesting here. It's the one time, if I would say I was rooting for Brainiac, I strangely was. I'll admit, I was like sitting there, I'm like, oh, I'd like to see Brainiac one up on Amanda. I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I always one up for people to kind of take it to Amanda Waller. This is a good story so far. I'm enjoying this quite a bit. I didn't totally know what to expect from this one. Actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to jump on this is I was a little bit behind on Superman. And some of that was deliberate because I knew we were doing this story. We, at a certain point in time when we started laying out kind of the framework of some of the stories we were going to be doing coming up, I knew House of Brainiac was going to be one of them. So I admittedly kind of set it aside a little bit, knowing that I was going to be coming back to it. I'd read Superman up to this point, and I'm like, I'll just kind of kick in and enjoy House of Brainiac when we get ready to do it on the show. And I'm glad I did, because I'm really enjoying my introductory read to this particular event. And it's funny, I've read certain parts of certain intros to Absolute Power before I read this. Yeah. So now coming back, it's like, oh, okay. I'm kind of intrigued by where that story is going.
Holy caffeine!
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of our show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address if you prefer to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. That has a link that straight to our Twitter and to our Facebook fan page. We are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. I want to thank all the people that continue to post all kinds of news, blogs, information about interesting comic topics. And thank you, everyone over there at Post. I check that every day. It's one of the first places I look in the morning. So I really appreciate the people that are curating information there. They're a great part of our team. You can find more about us in our About Us section of our show website, where you can link to us on gaming platforms and our own personal social media. We love connecting with you. You can find me every other week on Is It Jaws, which is a film review podcast. Paul Spataro was kind enough to invite me to be a co-host over there, having a great time talking film. And Mr. Segulin, we are sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Can you please tell me what is going on at DCBService.com?
We have Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, issues 0 and issues 1 of 10. Both are 40% off, $239 for issue 0, $299 for issue 1. Thank you, DCBS.
I learned earlier that was really cool to learn that each issue is going to be kind of an homage by different artists. That's very, very cool. I think I saw a blurb with Eduardo Risso being one of the ones from 100 Bullets fame, being one of the artists. I thought he was doing the whole series, which would have been great. But I like the homage piece even more. I think that's really, really cool. It's kind of a can't lose. Over at InStockTrades.com, of course, their deals of the week. We have the Captain America by Mark Grunwald Omnibus hardcover, $150 regularly, 46% off, only $81. 2 different covers to choose from. Fatale by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, Compendium, trade paperback, $59.99 regularly, 50% off, only $29.99. And Superman by Kurt Busiek, hardcover book 1, $49.99 regularly, 50% off, only $24.99. Thank you, DCB Service at InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Next episode, we're going to be talking about part 2 of our 3-part discussion of House of Brainiac. We will see you then.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim?
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it? What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think we did it right there.
Jim,
I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.